Hello and welcome to itchyKOO Studios, a photographic company based in Wetherby in Yorkshire. We're long-term partners and supporters of the AMP Awards, and our particular focus is on photography, as you might guess. Our goal today is to tell you a little bit more about the iconic Image of the Year competition, sponsored by itchyKOO, to help develop your skills photographing bands and gigs, business teams in meetings, and the audience generally having fun. So whichever angle you're coming from, whether you're a photographer or a fan of photography, stay tuned and enjoy the show. I just want to introduce you to my best friend. This is a Nikon D3X. I've wanted this for many years and invested a little while ago. But whatever camera you've got, wherever you are with photography, you can get some fabulous results out of a small point and shoot camera. But I'm going to talk you through some of the general settings that should be the same irrespective of what camera you have. Now think about it, you're going to be shooting light and dark in a gig situation where you can't really predict how bright or how sustained the light's going to be. So I want to talk to you about a general setup firstly, but by all means experiment on it. First thing I'm going to do, change my ISO setting to something high, something around 800 or 1000. ISO is the sensitivity of the sensor on the back of the camera. So because it's going to be dark, you want it to be as sensitive as it can. The more sensitive here, the faster your speed can go. Now, if you can make that out, I've got it on a manual setting. I've not got a flash. And it's bad manners, to be honest. If you're using flash, then you can be putting the performance off. So always shoot without a flash. These two numbers here, this is the speed, that's 100th of a second. And this is the aperture, or how wide the shutter is opening. And this is as wide as it will go on 2.8. Again, the logic is, the wider the aperture, the more light gets in the shortest time. So, your choice of lens will get you a different shot. So wide angle, close up, fisheye is quite dramatic. But this is a general purpose lens. You don't want to be changing your lens too many times. Again, think about it, you're in a gig situation, maybe fighting with the crowd, not literally, but you're fighting, jostling for position with other photographers at least. You want to make sure you're ready to go. This lens, using a zoom 24-70, suits me for most of the situations. Let's talk about how you can get some different effects. Now, I talked about a first setup where I've got it at 100th of a second. What do you think would happen if I drop that down to say 1/25th or even slower, maybe a 15th of a second? Now, if you think about that, the shutter's open for a relatively long time. That means if there's any movement going by, it will be quite blurred. Now, to get a blurred picture is sometimes a bad picture, but sometimes it can be a great picture where it shows excitement and movement, but you have to be really still in the way you're holding the camera, so anything steady is still in focus. Now think about the opposite of that. If you move that up to say a 500th of a second, that's going to be a very, very short burst that the shutter's open, so it's going to freeze frame every single thing. You can only do that if obviously it's very bright, otherwise you're just going to end up with very sharp darkness. So let's take it back down to 100th, and let's think about aperture. That's the 2.8. What I'm doing by increasing that number is making the opening narrower. That means less light's getting in, but it also means the depth of field is really sharp. Now if you picture a typical picture of, say, a model, her face might be in focus, but her hair behind may be out of focus. That's a narrow depth of field. That means you're shooting on 2.8. Now different cameras put this in different places. The Nikon's quite good for having access to a lot of the buttons via some of the turn wheels. Sometimes you have to go into the menu and change some of your settings in the menu. So look carefully at your camera and look for something that looks like this. Now this is about how your camera will expose the shot. In gigs, I tend to use this, which is, it will give you a small focus of a particular spot that you're aiming at through the lens. You just imagine if everything's black and you want to light a white t-shirt from one of the band members, this one will weight the exposure appropriately for the spot that the camera's looking at. Alternatively, if you want the whole stage well lit, you might use this next one. Different cameras use slightly different language, but just consider that. Do I want everything exposed well, or a specific point in the shot to be exposed? Composition. You've probably heard the phrase before. It's really how you're constructing the shot. If you picture a typical beach scene, what most amateur photographers will do is shoot the picture so that it's half sky and half sea or sand. It's a bit of a boring picture. So you want to try to offset the picture slightly to one side or the other, just to make it a bit more interesting. Again, think about trying to make your picture different from everybody else's. Now if you want to look up something called rule of thirds, and that'll help you understand a little bit more. But a quick version, which is the more interesting picture, when it's off to the side, when it's right in the middle. So just by looking at that, either one of those could work, but I'd argue that one's perhaps a little bit more interesting, where you're cropping to the edge and you're thinking, what's the guy looking at? So rule of thirds, look it up, have a listen, and make your shots a bit more interesting. Memorable images, the iconic images if you like, are the ones where someone's gone a little further, done something different. So play around with the zoom, get right in close on 70, or if you've got a longer telephoto lens, get right into the face. Likewise, go as wide angle as you can and shoot from underneath. Wide angle underneath changes the perspective, where the feet look huge and the head looks small, or even do it from the other way where you get above them. And then don't forget to do this. Turn around and point the camera back at the audience, because every time there's a good shot of the band, there's going to be an equally good shot of the audience behind being amazed by what's going on stage. And some of the best shots, I think, are when you think, what's everybody shooting, and can I shoot something different? Okay, some basic essentials. This camera has 2 memory cards. Most cameras wouldn't have 2, they just have the 1, but make sure that you have a stock of these, whether it's a CF card or one of the smaller varieties. Just make sure you've got enough for the shots that you're going to be shooting today. The other thing, your battery may be in a different place, but this is where the Nikon D3X keeps it. Make sure you've charged your battery. We've had tiers before where people turn up, they haven't charged, they take 3 shots and have got the rest of the gig to stand and watch their friends get the shots they wish they'd got. So charge up your battery, plenty of memory cards, and make sure you're good to go. Now don't forget, in a gig, you're going to be in the dark most of the time. So the more comfortable you are with your camera, the easier you're going to get results, rather than struggling to find lights, to look at the screen. But the more comfortable you are, the better. So try a little experiment. Close your eyes, put a blindfold on, stand in the dark. But see if you can remember where your on-off switch is, how you can change your aperture setting, your speed setting, and your ISO setting. If you can do that with your eyes closed, then you'll go a long way to getting a better shot. So I hope you found that interesting, informative, and give you something to think about when you're planning your shoot to win the itchyKOO Iconic Image of the Year for this year's AMP Awards. Thank you.